Hello everyone, my name is Garry Wills. I want in this video to present a playthrough of a war game of one of the scenarios in my new book, Wellington at Bay, which tells of the Battle of Villamuriel on 20th of October 1812 during the retreat from Burgos. This is the campaign map, and the Army of Portugal was advancing down the road from Burgos through Torquemada to Burgos, and the British and their allies, the Portuguese and the Spanish, occupied the line of the carry-on on the left. On the morning of the 25th, Maucune and Gautier were the advance guard, and while Gautier went to Tariego to cross the river there, Maucune diverted to Calabazanos, having learned that the village of Villamuriel de Corato and its important crossing over the river Carrion was held by the Anglo-Portuguese. This is the battlefield that we'll be seeing in 15mm scale in a few moments, and there are several points of interest. The village itself features a quite substantial church, but other than that at the time had only about 100 houses. It was on the main carriage road from Palencia to Duenas, and the other main habitation was the monastery at Calabazanos. In terms of crossing the river, that was only possible at the two fords marked here and the bridge. The weather had been quite bad in the preceding week with a lot of rain, so the river was running fast and deep. The other big feature of the battlefield, second only to the river, is the dry Canal de Castilla, which was under construction when the war broke out, and so consequently was unfinished and was empty. It's a significant feature such that men standing in the bottom of the canal can't see out, so it's quite an obstacle. Another feature of the battlefield were these wine vaults or bodegas, which created some rough ground on the western side of the canal. These vaults were quite extensive excavations. Some are reported to have had 100 steps underground, and basically they provided rough ground for skirmishers to defend. And the other feature of significance on the battlefield was the high ground. It rose from about 715 meters by the river up to 800 meters. Orders of battle for the day. The Allied force constituted the 5th Anglo-Portuguese Division, and they were under some new commanders. So Major General John Oswald arrived that morning to take command. Edward Barnes wasn't officially in command of the brigade for another 2 days, but had arrived just in time to take part in the battle. The division was supported by a brigade of the Galician Army of Spain, the 6th Army. So all told, they had 5,500 men with 6 guns. The French were comprised of the 5th Division of the Army of Portugal, led by General Division Maucune. This was the division beaten by the 5th Anglo-Portuguese Division at Salamanca just a few months earlier. The division comprised 2 brigades, each of 2 regiments, each of 2 battalions, and they also had 5 foot guns in support. Also supporting the division were the Light Cavalry Brigade of Defos, which comprised 6 squadrons of light cavalry plus a small detachment of a further regiment. This brigade was actually Curto's brigade, who was currently away commanding the division. The whole force was supported by Suham's 1st Reserve Horse Artillery Company, and with 5 guns. So in total, the French had just under 6,000 men and 10 guns. So when we look at the deployment of those troops on the map, the significant feature is that earlier in the day, Maucune had sent Darnald's brigade across the river. They'd managed to make a partial repair of the bridge, which had been destroyed by Wellington's engineers, and he'd deployed the 15th line extensively in skirmish order, and they'd got across the canal and were threatening the British position and the Spanish position, specifically on the Anglo-Allied left. Montfort's brigade, as you'll see, hardly takes any part in the battle at all. So as far as the game rules are concerned, I use Black Powder 2nd edition for this game. I use 15mm figures and therefore the centimetre scale, where every distance in the rulebook is measured in centimetres rather than inches. I also use the special rule from Last Argument of Kings, where no firing is allowed if the unit has moved more than once during the term, which I think has been adopted in Clash of Eagles as well. For generals, there are several general options for generals in Black Powder 2. I'm not a big fan of rerolls on command tests, so mainly because it has the effect of increasing the staff rating by 1 in the overall result. So I prefer to use the original rule for generals, wherein the division commander in this case can give orders to units that otherwise wouldn't get them. I've also used the staff ratings as a way of encouraging historical behaviour in the generals during the game. So for instance, Spry didn't move at all off the hill all day, so I've given him a staff rating of 6, which means it's unlikely, he'll fail more often than he won't. Another feature of this battle that is not common to a lot of Peninsular War battles is that the villages, in this case the Villamuriel and Calabazanos, can't actually be garrisoned, and the reason for this is that both sides actually mounted guards to prevent the troops going into the buildings, because the wine had been harvested and was all over the village in the houses, so there'd been significant drunkenness in the march through Torquemada in both armies. So consequently the buildings can't be garrisoned in the game, and can only be passed through by units in skirmish order or march column. And finally, I do skirmishers slightly differently from the main rules, which I'll show next. Differently, this shows how I represent skirmishers. I use these 6 centimetre movement trays, which show the correct frontage and depth for a deployed skirmish company. So a French company of 4 figures or 130 men in this would have 2 of these bases. And I also give skirmishers light cover if they've moved less than 6 centimetres to represent the effect of the greater dispersion than is allowed for in the rules. The game itself lasts 8 game turns or 2 hours from 4 p.m. in the evening. The sun will have set by the end of turn 6, and the 8th turn ends in complete darkness after civil twilight. The Allied army moves first. So in terms of victory conditions, the Allies specifically John Oswald, was told by Wellington to drive the enemy from the right bank of the river. So consequently, his victory condition is to advance the banks of the Carrion without the division being broken, in black powder terms, and the fate of Lignan's rather fragile brigade does not count towards the army morale of the Allies. On the other hand, the French have a simple task, which is to repulse the Allied attack, breaking both the British brigades while remaining on the right bank of the Carrion. In reality, the French were quickly forced back onto the other bank of the Carrion. So it's actually quite difficult to judge how much of a fight they were prepared to put up. But for the sake of the game, I've set this as the victory condition. This is a view of the battlefield as I've recreated it in 15mm scale. I've used a large amount of the Callistra Hexon terrain, and the Canal de Castilla, which I referred to earlier on, carves across the middle of the battlefield using the Callistra World War I trench system, which works quite well for this because it doesn't have a lot of trenchy detail moulded on the inside of the ditch. And I've used a lot of lichen just to blend it into the terrain and give it a bit more height so that it replicates the not being able to see out of the canal feature. The roads and river sections are all from Timecast, and the buildings are a mixture of JR from Manchester Militant and hovels. On the left you can see a photograph of a view from the high ground, and this looks across towards the bridge. It gives you some view of the height that is a bit lost in these war games representations. The ground rises up probably 8 or 9 hexon heights, but it's still more compatible with 2mm scale figures than 15. This shows the French left, which is made in 3 parts. On the left you can see Montfort's brigade standing, waiting. He's actually himself across the river with some skirmishers. One of his brigades, one of his battalions rather, is deployed as a light infantry mixed battalion, as in Clash of Eagles. Next to them on this side of the river is the light cavalry brigade waiting patiently, and to the right obviously the artillery, which combines his Maucune's own foot artillery with horse artillery from the reserve. On the other side of the canal, on the left of this photograph, is Spry's brigade with the broken 8th Castores behind them. To their right, to the right of them rather, is Barnes's brigade deployed in column as instructed by Wellington for their assault. Then come the light infantry battalions of Barnes's brigade and Pringle's brigade, with the 2 companies of the Brunswick Earls light infantry. Then on the hill is Lawson's artillery brigade, and to their right, to the right of them rather, is Pringle's brigade of 3 battalions. The 2nd, 4th foot right at the back on the top of the hill, with the 1st, 4th and the 2nd, 30th and the 2nd, 44th in front of them, and they're facing off against the 2nd, 15th Ligne from the French infantry, who have their skirmishers deployed amongst the bodegas, using the light infantry mixed formation from Clash of Eagles. Looking at the French right on the this side of the canal, you can see one of the battalions of voltigeurs and grenadiers skirmishing on the canal bank, and then next to them is the first battalion of the 15th Ligne, deployed in light infantry mixed order as before. And across the canal from then is Lignan's brigade of two line infantry battalions and their cazadores guarding the flank. And then you can see next to them in the centre of the photograph on the hill is the 1st battalion of the 9th, which had been withdrawn from Barnes's brigade for the day, that occupied a pseudo light infantry role and was, as described by one of its officers, an independent battalion. And that really covers it, apart from the units near the bridge, which are the rest of the 1st Brigade of Maucune's division, the 4th Battalion and the 6th Battalion of the 66th line or ligne, who are sheltering from the artillery fire from Lawson's brigade on the ridge. So this is the end of Allied Turn 1, and in this photograph you can see that Lignan on the left has not started well. He's a brand new brigade commander, and he's failed his command test with a staff rating of only 7, which is not ungenerous given his experience, but nonetheless they are standing watching. Yeah, and the turn 1 didn't really start at all well for the Allied army. Here, Pringle's brigade, ordered to advance down the slope, actually blundered and threw a 1 for their blunder and retired 2 moves up the hill. And you can see them here skulking around and close to Wellington, so they'll have got a few strong words, no doubt. However, despite failures elsewhere, Barnes has aggressively led his brigade down to the edge of the canal using his +1 staff rating modifier. Also, despite a staff rating of only 6, Spry has managed to lead his brigade forward 1 move in support. So the action then moved on to French turn 1, and the confusion in the ranks of the Allies on the French right has encouraged the French skirmishers to get across the canal. They only got 1 move, so they're halfway across at the moment. On the other flank, the French skirmishers have withdrawn a move in the face of Barnes's aggressive move, and are awaiting the attack from musket range. And this also at the end of turn 1 shows a close-up of the French skirmishers engaging Lawson's artillery on the hill. Now we're at the end of Allied turn 2, and this was a significantly more successful turn for the Allies this time. Lignan managed to bring forward his brigade to threaten the French skirmishers and bring his castores to the banks of the canal and bring fire to bear on the skirmishers therein. Meanwhile, Pringle had a much better turn. He managed to provide his guys with impetus for 3 moves, bringing them back past their original position to engage the French skirmishers. The movement distance on the slopes in this scenario is only 8 centimeters per move rather than a normal 12 because they're so steep. Meanwhile, the French skirmishers themselves have been engaged by their British counterparts and have had some disorder inflicted upon them. Meanwhile, to Barnes's front, he sent the 1st Battalion of the 38th Foot in to charge the French skirmishers, and the skirmishers then had a decision to make, whether to evade or to take the charge, and in this case they decided to take the charge. The 1st 38th did indeed win the melee, as you might expect, but unfortunately for them, the French skirmishers survived their break test, and so the close combat carried on, in some ways mimicking what happened in real life. The French participants suggesting the fighting here lasted a good half an hour. Meanwhile, on the right of Barnes's brigade, you can see the battalion, the 3rd Battalion of the 1st Foot, still on the wrong side of the canal. They were disordered by the skirmish fire in the previous move and therefore couldn't move this time. Meanwhile, on the extreme British right, Spry's brigade made no further movement towards the French skirmish in front of them. At the end of French turn 2, we can see that this turn had started with a success for the French skirmishers. The Spanish 2nd Volunteers de la Coruña, a relatively new battalion, came under fire from the skirmishers, lost a casualty, and because they're wavering under the characteristics I've given them, they had failed their break test and ran from the field. Meanwhile, Pringle's brigade in the centre came under fire from the French skirmishers. So, facing Barnes's brigade, the 1st 38th Foot continued their melee with or close combat with the French skirmishers, and that ended in a draw this time, and both sides held their ground. Meanwhile, on the extreme French left, Montfort's composite battalion of Grenadiers and Voltigeurs looked on in support. So we're now at the end of Allied turn 3, during which Lignan's other battalion, the 1st Asturias, charged the French skirmish line and forced them to fall back on their form supports. There followed an exchange of musketry, which disordered the French. Meanwhile, in the centre, the same Allied turn 3, the composite battalion of the 2nd 30th and the 2nd 44th charged the French skirmishers supplied by the 2nd Battalion of the 15th Ligne, and also forced them to fall back on their supports in the canal. Meanwhile, Oswald, the division commander, has got the composite lights company battalion of the British through the village, so they can start engaging the French reserves and the French artillery. So, meanwhile, the close combat between the 1st 38th Foot and the French skirmishers went into another round, and during this round, both units were shaken, but both survived their break test, so it was due to go on for yet another round. At the same time, the 3rd Battalion of the 1st Foot charged across the canal into the other unit of skirmishers, and in the ensuing close combat shook them, but they survived their their break test. So we now move on to the end of French turn 3, and starting on the British and Allied left, you can see that the skirmish combat between the French and the Spanish has very much gone the French way, with the Cazadores, it's only a tiny unit, being shaken, but they're still standing. They survived their break test. And likewise, the 1st Asturias to their right managed to survive the ongoing firefight with the French battalion, the 1st 15th, opposite them, and despite receiving 2 casualties, they survived their break tests as a result of their wavering special rule. Meanwhile, in the centre, at the end of French turn 3, the 2nd Battalion 15th Ligne, which was providing the skirmish screen at the canal, lost the melee with the 2nd 30th and the 2nd 44th, and was forced to retire, and they took up a position on Lawson's Mound. So finally, after some fierce resistance, the skirmishers facing the 1st Battalion of the 38th Foot were broken and fled the field, while those facing the 3rd First also lost their melee or close combat and were forced to retire. Meanwhile, having seen the threat from Barnes's brigade, Montfort rallied, reformed his skirmish battalion into close order, ready to defend the ford. So, at the end of Allied turn 4, we can see that Lignan's men, survivors of his brigade, are gamely pressing on and engaging their foes in a musketry duel. In the centre, facing Pringle, he had the 4th Battalion of the 66th Line, which had been moved up to support the 2nd 15th, was left all alone facing the 3 infantry battalions of Pringle's brigade, and these had a really good shooting session, which broke the 4th of the 66th. So, to complete a good move for the Allied armies, the 3rd First Foot charged the remaining French skirmishers to their front, broke them, and then rallied back to be a bit further away from the French artillery, which are quite a threat over that piece of open ground there. So, moving on to the end of the French turn 4, halfway through the game, the preceding Allied turn had a dramatic impact on Darnold's 1st Brigade of Maucune's division. The loss of 3 units plus the shaking of the 2nd 15th meant that the brigade as a whole was broken, and the remnants of the brigade had to start withdrawing to the safety of the bridge, ford and the river line. So the Spanish of Lignan's brigade were happy to see their immediate opponents also withdrawing away at 1 move per turn, as is required by the rule. And here you can see in the centre the 2nd 15th withdrawing off of Lawson's Mound and pushing the 6th Battalion of the 66th Ligne back towards the ford. Meanwhile, Montfort on the extreme French left has a decision to make at this point. He doesn't know what's happening on the other flank, but he can see that his supports in Darnold's brigade are flooding away from him. So does he stay there or does he retire to the other bank? So we're now at the end of Allied turn 5. Lignan has fallen into his old ways and has failed to pass a command test. So his brigade are looking on as the French. He's the first Asturias have got 3 casualties from the French fire, but has passed all of their wavering break tests. Meanwhile, Pringle's men have crossed the canal, and the leading British skirmishers have captured or recaptured Lawson's Mound and are pressing in on the French remnants of Darnard's brigade. For Barnes's brigade, the game turn 5 was really about rallying the 1st 38th to try and get rid of some of their casualties. If they were needed to advance on the French artillery, they would need to have as much space as possible regarding their stamina. So, for the French turn 5, Darnard's 1st Brigade has got no choice but to keep retiring, and here they've gone back down the slope towards the riverbank, trying to escape the oncoming British infantry. Meanwhile, on the extreme left at Calapazanos, Montfort has learnt the bad news, but under the French victory conditions, if he can get half of his brigade across the river, he can still snatch something from what looks like a certain French defeat at the moment. So we're now at the end of Allied turn 6. The sun is setting, and what we can see here is that Pringle has brought his brigade forward to engage the French defenders in musketry and try and break these guys before they escape across the river. Meanwhile, the British and Brunswick skirmishers are engaging the French artillery in musket fire to try and provide some cover for their infantry advance. Meanwhile, on the British right flank, Barnes has formed up his brigade to advance towards Calapazanos rather than towards the bridge as in history, in order to drive off the last of the French defenders. So we're now at the end of French turn 6, and it's really all about the slow process of getting the French battalions of the 1st Brigade back across the river. They can't receive orders, so they only move 1 move per turn, and so the river is a particular obstacle in this sense. Meanwhile, on the French left, Montfort is trying to bring forward his other battalions to try and give the necessary half of them across the ford so they can fulfill their own victory conditions. So we're now at the end of Allied turn 7, and Lignon has started the process of crossing the canal and adding his pressure to that of the British on the retreating French. Meanwhile, by the bridge, Pringle is decided to engage the French in musketry fire, as he doesn't want to risk getting his brigade broken in close combat at this time, and the French are having trouble getting away as it is. On the British right near the ford at Calapazanos, unfortunately Barnes didn't have enough movement to actually get into hand-to-hand combat with the French defenders, but a musketry duel ensued which disordered them. And here we're at the end of French turn 7, and the withdrawal of the 1st Brigade continues as the space is made around the bridge for the retiring remnants of the 1st Brigade. Fearing being cut off from the bridge, the skirmish unit makes an allowable move for a unit from a broken brigade and forms square, so they're better protected. Meanwhile, at Calapazanos, the covering battalion uses musketry to try and keep the 3rd First at bay while covering the ford. However, at the ford itself, Montfort made painfully slow progress in getting his brigade across the river. Okay, so now we're at the end of Allied turn 8. Turn 8 being the last turn of the game, by the end of which it would have been completely dark. And Lenien's men, not wanting to be left out, have managed to get across the ford and forward, closing in on the retiring French square. Meanwhile, at the ford itself, the 1st Battalion and 15th Linia has been broken by the musketry fire from Pringle's men and has left the field. So also at the end of Allied turn 8, Calabazanos, the 3rd first have charged home on the defending French battalion and fought a melee, but which was inconclusive. So here we are at the end of French turn 8 at the bridge and the ford nearby. The river and the being a defensible object, the French no longer have to retire, and so the 2nd 15th have formed line to fend off the encroaching Brits. However, in the last move of the game, the French battalion defending the Calabazanos ford did manage to push back the 3rd battalion of the 1st Foot, and the French Montfort did manage to get another battalion across the ford, but it was not enough. The rest of his brigade, due to a poor command role, was stuck in the darkness on the other side of the river. So that was the end of the game, and this photograph gives you an overview with the battlefield as it finished. In real life at this time, the time had reached civil twilight, so it was pretty dark across the whole battlefield. So if we go back to the victory conditions for the game, the Allies were to drive the French from the right bank of the river, advance to the banks of the Carrion without the division being broken, and Lenien's brigade was irrelevant in terms of army morale of the Allied army. The French were required to repulse the Allied attack, breaking both of the British brigades while remaining on the right bank of the Carrion. And when we look at the game situation at the end of turn 8, we can see that indeed the Allies have achieved their goal, and no, the French had not managed to achieve their goal in any way, shape or form. So the game ends with an Allied win this time, which is a good mimic of what happened in reality, and goes to show that you can use black powder for these historical refights. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. As I said at the beginning, the research done to set up the game and is all covered in this book, Wellington at Bay, which you can obtain from Helion. It goes into a lot of detail about how the battle was fought and who was there and what sort of experience the soldiers had and how they fought tactically as well. Hopefully this will be out in the next month or two once the COVID-19 stuff is over, and I certainly recommend you subscribe to my channel, because I tend to produce a number of videos like this with regard to both scenarios for this book, for this book, are in this book, and also for my other publications, Wellington's First Battle, which is about the Battle of Boxtel in 1794, and other games, future coming books on Lincels in 1793, and also Toulon in 1793. So please subscribe, there's plenty to look forward to. Thank you for watching.